Hi, I'm Dr. John, back with our third video on the question, your digestion, repair the damage, and eat fad-free video series. This is the third video, and this one is on the symptoms, the lymphatic congestion that causes a vast variety of our symptoms. Let me just ask you a couple of questions, okay? How many of you experience any of these? Tiredness, lethargy, fatigue, rings getting tight on your fingers, ankles swelling, skin concerns, eczema, rashes, itchy, hives, things like that, itchiness on your skin, toenail issues, related issues, joint pain that moves around your body or is just simply joint pain, achiness in your fingers or your toes, allergies, sinus congestion, tiredness, migraine headaches, tension, food sensitivities, gas, bloating, menstrual issues where prior to your menstrual cycles like PMS, you hold on to more water, swell, bloat, break out, symptoms along those lines, have extra weight that you don't like. These are all symptoms of lymphatic congestion, including brain fog, lack of mental clarity, lack of ability to focus, all of these issues. I'm going to make the case that this idea of the grain brain is actually a problem with the brain drain. And newly found research has shown that the brain literally drains 3 pounds of toxic chemicals and plaque out of your brain every single year through newly found lymphatic channels that drain your brain of these toxins that are linked directly now to, when they're congested, anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, autoimmunity and infection, and inflammation. These are the epidemics, the enigmas of our time. We don't understand how to treat half of these things. And now we found, just 2 years ago or so, research has found that these lymphatics drain the brain. And what I love about, what we do at LifeSpa is I'm always writing about proving ancient wisdom with modern science, taking the ancient principles of Ayurveda or other traditional systems of medicine, and then trying to find science to back it up. And I'm blown away by how much science there is that back up these ancient principles. And that's what I write about 3 times a week. And all that information is free for you on my website. There's over 700 plus videos and articles online for free, all proving ancient wisdom with modern science. And one of those is this idea of lymphatic congestion. They knew thousands of years ago that there were lymphatic vessels in the brain that drained the brain, and it was linked to anxiety and depression. And those lymphatics in the brain are directly linked to the lymphs around your gut, and they're directly linked to digestion. So when you have indigestion, and you don't digest well, and you once were able, and you slowly begin to break down and congest your intestinal skin and your lymphatic congestion, those toxins are going to find their way into the brain and cause a host of these problems, which I want to get into in more detail in this video. Before I dive into the brain stuff, and I want to do that in detail, I want to just dial back for a second and talk about where it all starts in your intestinal tract. And I talked about in the last video that when you have indigestion, when the bile flow is congested, the stomach doesn't produce enough acid, the hard to digest proteins that are in wheat and dairy and corn and soy and other things like that, they go through and toxins and chemicals from the environment, they go through the stomach undigested. They're too big to get into the blood, and they uptake into the collecting ducts of your lymphatic system called the lacteals. And they can congest, and they then congest and they bog down the lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is a 3-part system. It's a delivery system for nutrition, it's a detoxification system, and a carrier for your immune system. Powerful stuff. And it's the largest circulatory system of your body. And there are literally volumes of research in the research journals about the lymphatic system, but none of it's made it to clinical practice yet. None of it. In Ayurvedic medicine, they have volumes of research and clinical practice studies on the lymphatic therapies that have made it to clinical practice. So what I have done and sort of put the dots together is take the research from modern science with the ancient wisdom and the time-tested wisdom of Ayurveda understanding lymphatic flow and put it together and use it for the last 30 years in clinical practice. I've been a lymphatic fanatic forever, all through my practice, because it makes the most sense. The lymph system is the drains in the body, and if the drains are clogged, bad things happen. In Ayurvedic medicine, the lymphatic system, or the lymph, is called rasa. And there's an entire branch of Ayurveda dedicated to rasa or lymph called rasayana. And Rasayana is the specific study of longevity. The idea that if your lymphs are clogged, the drains are clogged, you don't live long, don't live healthy, don't live vitally. So the idea, now we know that the lymphatic system is directly linked to longevity. In one study, they found that the quality of the intestinal skin, which we talked about in the last video, the quality of the lymphatic system that lines the entire intestinal tract from top to bottom, and the microbiology that depends on both of those are directly linked to your longevity. And if they break down, then our life extension is significantly or somewhat compromised. Your intestinal skin, where your lymphatic system starts, is when you start out your life, is as big as a tennis court. You flatten it all out, it's that much surface area. As we age, it starts to shrink, and we have to care for it, because it's not like a car filter. You can get a new filter in your car. It's permanent. So we have to care for it with making sure we keep as much toxicity out. And the major filter is your upper digestive strength, which we talked about in the last video. If you haven't watched that, go back and watch that video, because it's critically important to know how all this connects and how the upper digestion sets you up for lymphatic congestion. And when those toxins move undigested into the lymphatic system, the lymph vessels can swell. They can sclerose like arteries. They can ooze toxins, fat toxins from your lymph into your fat cells and cause abdominal obesity. They block the flow of lymphatic flow into every cell of your body. Your lymphatic system, this is fascinating. Your lymphatic system delivers baseline energy to every single cell of your body. So, you ever eat a big meal and feel like you have a food coma where you just have to go to sleep? That undigested food goes into your intestinal tract, clogs those lymphs, and your lymph now can't deliver the good fats, baseline fats, as triglycerides into every cell of your body, and you fall asleep. That's how it works. When you don't have good lymphatic flow, you don't have baseline energy. That's why chronic fatigue syndrome and Epstein-Barr viruses, these are all lymphatic congestive issues. And once we get the lymph system to begin to move, then you begin to have the energy and deliver that energy again. But again, it depends on upstream digestive strength, so you can break down those fats, good guys and bad guys, so the good guys can be delivered as energy, and the bad guys can be rinsed through lymph nodes, of which there's about 700 of them in your body, where they're loaded with white blood cells that scrub clean all the toxins, and they bring it to the liver, and they can convert the fat-soluble toxins to water-soluble, and then they can be eliminated. That's the process that takes place. So if the lymph system around your intestinal tract breaks down because of undigested foods and all the stuff we talked about in the last two videos, stress, overwhelming amounts of stress, disconnecting from the circadian rhythms, not having the right and proper microbiology to protect you, undigested foods ripping your intestinal tract to shreds, processed foods breaking down your digestion, everything that I just mentioned, those are reversible things. We don't have to we don't have to take anything out of our diet that we've been eating for millions of years. Okay? We can fix those things. And then if the intestinal skin breaks down and the toxins ooze into your lymphatic system, they're going to find their way to different aspects of the lymph. There's the skin-associated lymph called SALT, S-A-L-T, which can actually push impurities out through your skin, causing food-related hives, allergies, eczema. It can cause itchiness on your skin. You can see different fungus, toenail, nail issues that you see. These are lymphatic congestive issues. The blood can't get in because the waste can't get out, and the immune system is literally stuck in traffic. When you get bit by a mosquito, boom, you have a lymphatic army that's underneath your skin that is there to pounce on any bug that's trying to get from a mosquito stinger into your body and infect you. But if that lymphatic system is stuck in traffic, you're going to get a much more global response and become more vulnerable to infection. Everywhere you have skin on your body, you have a lymphatic layer on the other side. Your respiratory tract has a lymphatic layer on the other side of that as well. And if that lymph is congested, then your intestinal cilia, your respiratory cilia that are trying to sweep the toxins into your digestion to get it out of there and get cooked by the acid, If it doesn't happen well, it gets absorbed into your lymph. Then your lymph takes care of business. It's like a backup system. But if that skin is irritated because the lymph is congested, then the skin will start to produce excess reactive mucus, or it'll become dried out. And the intestinal skin and your respiratory skin is just like the three little bears. It can't be too dry, it can't be too wet, it's got to be just right. And if it isn't just right, the microbes that lie in your respiratory tract and intestinal tract are altered significantly and compromising you in terms of your immunity. And that is a problem that we can fix by actually supporting lymphatic flow and getting the lymphatic system to move out of your body better. Perhaps the most compelling research about the lymphatic system was when they discovered these brain lymphs that we were talking about in the beginning. The brain lymphs, called glymphatics, drain 3 pounds of chemicals and toxins out of your brain every year. There was a doctor in the early 1900s, Dr. Cotton, had a psychiatric hospital on the East Coast. World famous. People sent all their sort of mentally ill patients and friends and family to this hospital. And what he would do is he would chop off their fingers or pull out their teeth or pull out their ovaries or chop off a toe. Anything that he deemed infected, he'd pull it out. And people got better. And it was a world famous psychiatric hospital, and that was their MO. Fast forward now 100 years plus, and we find out that these brain lymphs and central nervous system lymphs that were newly discovered as well are directly linked to infection. Which means that that guy who was chopping fingers and toes off was taking infections out of the body, allowing the lymphatic system to breathe and move, and decongesting a stuck in traffic lymphatic system, allowing the immune system army to get to the accident and deal with the emergencies in an appropriate fashion. If the lymph system can't get where it needs to go to fight the battle, the immune battle, what happens is you get a localized inflammatory allergic reaction. And that is preventable by understanding the connection between stress, your gut, your microbiome, the stress impacting the ability for you to digest and move waste out, toxins building up to your liver congestion, bile flow issues, bad foods, all slowing down bile flow, turning down digestive acid, and now foods are going undigested, acting as irritants to the intestinal skin, and now we're vulnerable to foods we were never vulnerable to before. Anything hard to digest gives me indigestion. And yeah, that's fine, but as we said in the very first video, what about the environmental pollutants, pesticides, mercury that's on every organic vegetable that you can't wash off? What are you going to do about that? You can't stop eating that because it's everywhere. We can't solve this problem by taking the symptoms out of the equation. We got to fix the cause. So we're beginning to build this, I think, pretty cool picture. I know it's a little complicated, but it isn't that complicated. It's pretty simple and pretty logical. And here we are thinking about lymphatic flow. The brain lymphs, when they don't drain, are directly linked to inflammation, infection, anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, brain fog, and autoimmunity. Autoimmunity is like the enigma. Nobody knows why autoimmunity is there. Now we find that's due to congested central nervous system lymphatic vessels that can't drain. The central computer is completely congested. It's not getting the feedback from the rest of the body to know what to do, where to go, how to put out a fire here or there. The whole central nervous system is bogged down. And how it works is phenomenally fascinating. You have this substance in your spine called cerebrospinal fluid. You've all heard of it. Well, cerebrospinal fluid is made in your brain. All the blood that goes to your brain goes into a plexus of vessels called the choroid plexus at the base of your brain. And it pushes out this fluid from your blood, which is lymph. Your lymphatic system is just the plasma of the blood. Cerebrospinal fluid is lymphatic fluid with a different name. So just know that your cerebrospinal fluid is the exact same substance as lymphatic fluid. In fact, it pumps up and down your spine and drains throughout your spine into the lymphs around your spine. So we know for a fact it's the exact same fluid. So it gets pushed into your brain through this really tight bunch of vessels, and it oozes out a bunch of this lymphatic fluid, which washes through the ventricles of your brain like a car wash, washing all the toxic chemicals, mercury, iron particles out of your brain. And then they get uptaken into these lymphatic vessels that they just discovered very recently, a couple of years ago, that surround the veins in the sagittal sinus, like a mohawk haircut, and the transverse sinuses. And they drain into the cervical lymphs here and into your nasal lymphs here, which is also pretty cool, because Ayurveda sort of talked about how we can cleanse the cerebral spinal fluid in the brain lymphs by doing a technique called nasya. Nasya is nasal inhalation of certain herbalized oils. And by doing that, you actually increase the production or the flow of the lymphatic drainage. So if that cerebral spinal fluid is trying to get into your brain and wash your brain and drain out through those lymphs, but those lymphs are blocked, then you can't wash your brain. And you slowly but surely begin to see cognitive decline. And we're talking about 3 pounds of toxic chemicals and plaque out of your brain every single year. And if that's not draining, the science is very clear, and more is coming out every single day about the implications of this congestive system. And this is something that Ayurveda talked about thousands and thousands of years ago. So here are some of the things that move your cerebral spinal fluid and wash your brain. And then I'm going to go back and teach you how to heal your lymphatics in your gut too. So we're not going to forget about digestion, but I love this understanding because it puts all the pieces together of how gluten and food-related intolerances cause brain fog and fatigue. It's coming from the poor digestion, lymphatic kind of porosity where these toxins are moving into the lymphatic system, congesting brain lymph, and they have found undigested gluten particles in the lymphatic system. So if we were to break it down and digest it properly, seal up the intestinal skin, we don't have these brain drain symptoms anymore. So this is just, I think, revolutionary, fascinating information, and I feel super honored to be able to have studied Ayurveda to sort of get a glimpse of what they knew, and then read the writing on the wall in Western medicine and put it together and go, wait a minute, are we doing another dumb thing, going down another crazy dietary road, causing more vulnerability and putting the symptoms and the fire out? Because look what happened when we took cholesterol out of our diet. 60 years later, we have obesity, diabetes, and blood sugar issues, and mood-related issues. And if we take grains and wheat and nuts and seeds out of our diet, eat nothing but meat and vegetables, which is what the paleo people are telling us that we should do. And if you look at or talk to any anthropologist, they'll tell you there's nothing paleo about the paleo diet. Harvard researchers will tell you that ancient humans ate grains. They ate tubers, they ate starches, they ate vegetables, they ate beans. It was very important for them, in fact. And new studies are showing that people who have the best mental health eat grains. There's a new book out called Mindspan by a Harvard researcher said the people who have the best mental health, cognitive health as they age into their 80s and 90s, people who eat whole grains. So we got to stop the craziness, and we got to start thinking what is logical. How can we fix us and protect ourselves with what we put in our mouth, as opposed to blaming foods that have been in our diet for millions, 3 to 4 million years. That's crazy, right? So here we are in the lymphatic system, and just going through congesting our skin-associated lymph, our respiratory-associated lymph, causing allergies, our brain lymph, causing brain fog and mood-related issues. And then we have this technique in Ayurveda called nasya, which is a technique where you sniff medicated oils into your brain, you clean out the sagittal sinus. And I want to tell you a quick story about a patient of mine who had, I gave her these treatments, and because in Ayurveda this is linked to mental, emotional related issues, old emotional traumas that we hold on to. You know how when you get traumatized in your life, you somehow figure out a way to forge on, and even though you're devastated emotionally, you figure out a way to just take one step after another and move through. And a lot of us have done that, and we figure it out. In Ayurveda, they said that happens because we block awareness of the pain in this sagittal sinus. That it wasn't just lymph and toxins that were being blocked. They talked about it as molecules of emotion that were being protected and blocked so we can kind of continue to live our life. So in Ayurveda, this was an emotional detox therapy. And now we have the research showing us it's autoimmunity and brain issues and all these other things, which is pretty fascinating as well. So I gave her these therapies and I gave her some journaling exercises to do along with it for the emotional component. And as she finished the therapy of cleaning out the brain, the nausea therapy, she was writing in her journal, and she said, I had this epiphany where I was abused when I was 14 years old. I completely blocked that out of my mind. I completely forgot about it. But what was really weird and amazing was I didn't really care so much about the event. I wasn't so affected by that. I was affected by my childhood prior to the event was perfectly happy-go-lucky kid. And my childhood after that event was this type A, hyper-vigilant, corporate executive, 9-hour-a-week, executive, burned out my adrenals, burned out my blood sugar, now burned out my thyroid, perfectionist, color-coded closet, everything had to be just right as a part of her safety. And then she saw her happy-go-lucky childhood and she said, I want that back. And she said, yeah, this event was not great, but it was 10 minutes and it wasn't worth 25 years of my life. And she said, I just dropped it. And when she just dropped it, that's what happens with you clean out this brain. You get detached to these old emotions. And she just dropped it. When she came to see me, she had hyperthyroidism. She had a goiter the size of a grapefruit in her neck. And literally after the week of that therapy, her goiter was gone. I swear to you. And it was amazing. Her thyroid numbers came down 200 points in the first week. In the next 3 to 4 to 5, 6 months, her thyroid numbers came down significantly more, and her thyroid normalized. Powerful understanding of how pervasive and effective it is when you can start to help the lymphatic system move. This technique I've actually written in a step-by-step article called Sinus Cleansing and Emotional Baggage. I call it the super nausea technique. And if you go on my website and you just type in that, and we'll give you a link to the article as well, you can go step by step and learn the exact technique that has been used for thousands of years to decongest those brain lymphs. I think it's one of the most important articles I've ever written. Sort of just gets buried in there, and I don't know if anybody even knows it's there, but I do it regularly 2 times a week easily to keep my brain going because I don't want to lose it. And I think the value of that long term of getting this whole thing loosened up and cleaned, there's nothing more important than your brain because that major computer takes care of everything. And so please look at that article if you want to dig into these brain lymphs. It's fascinating information. Then we got to go back and heal the intestinal skin and the lymphs that are there as well. How do we do that? Well, we know that the lymphs move with antioxidants. Whenever you hear of an antioxidant, we know they work through the lymphatic system. So one of the mechanisms of antioxidant therapy is that it actually cleanses and scrubs and detoxifies your lymphatic system. Pomegranates, blueberries, cherries, anything red like beets, cranberries that dye your skin red when you eat them and cover your shirt with dye, those are all lymphatic movers, powerful lymphatic movers. Alkalizing agents, greens, berries, greens like leafy greens and sprouts and are all very good lymphatic movers because they help to alkalize the body. Breathing techniques, doing deep breathing. I have a meditation that I do called the 1-minute meditation, and you can watch a couple of my meditation videos in my meditation course called the Transformational Awareness Technique, or TAT. And if you go to my website and look at that, there's a couple of free videos there. One of which is the 1-minute meditation. And studies show that when you breathe forcefully through your nose, it increases cerebrospinal fluid, which forces the cerebrospinal fluid into the brain and gets the brain to wash and the lymph to move. So that's really very, very effective. I'm a big fan of the Surya Namaskar, the sun salutation exercise, because it's a combination of flexion and extension exercises. When you think about breathing in as you extend and breathing out as you flex, when you breathe in, sort of like a stomach pulling technique that I talked about in the second video, where when you breathe in, the diaphragm is contracting and pulling down, and you're arching and pulling back, and you're creating separation in here. And this right here, if the brain lymphs weren't important, this is where the rubber meets the road, right here. If this is where the digestion breaks down first and foremost, because stress locks your diaphragm, forces you to breathe like a rabbit 26,000 times a day in the upper chest where the fight or flight emergency receptors are, and the calm, repair, digest nerves, the parasympathetic nerve receptors are in the lower lobes of your lungs predominantly. So deep breathing while you're doing yoga, wow. I mean, it's like they created an exercise of yoga and breathing and combined it together that were specific for brain lymph, CSF flow, and opening up the digestion. I absolutely can't think of something more profound to do on a daily basis. It's so critically important. Nasal breathing exercise when you go for a walk, that's been shown to increase CSF flow. Just walking and breathing through your nose. I wrote a whole book on the difference between nasal breathing and mouth breathing in my first book called Body, Mind, and Sport, which was all about research we did on brainwave patterns. When you breathe through your nose and you're exercising, even running vigorously, the brain goes into an alpha state, a coherent brainwave pattern, which means that our research showed that when you breathe through your nose deeply while you're exercising, the brain can flip into a meditative state while you're running in a vigorous manner. You open up your mouth through the same workout and breathe through your mouth, the brain goes into a frenetic, stressed out pattern. You can train your body to handle stress, exercise being a model for stress, from a composed, calm place. I call it the eye of the hurricane. The bigger the eye, the bigger the calm, the more powerful the winds. The runner's high. My best race is my easiest race. You know, when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, he said the world seemed to stand still or not even exist. I felt like I was going slow, like I was standing still, were his exact words. When Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, he was in the zone. Somehow he tapped into that eye of the hurricane, the calm that supported the winds of the storm effortlessly. I'm a big believer of unlimited human potential. I am not a believer that you have to meditate and do less and sit around and do nothing. We should change this world, but we can't do it if we're dodging refrigerators in the stress, in the winds of the hurricane. And the whole point, when you tie it all together, when you have brain lymph that's moving, digestive function that's allowing, and you're living, like we said in video 1, going downstream with the circadian rhythms, you find this internal composure of calm. Meditation, yoga, breathing, all establishing that internal experience of composure and calm. And in that internal experience of composure and calm, the lymph system is activated. It drains in a parasympathetic dominant, rejuvenating state. It congests in fight or flight activity. So we need that repair. Historically, humans they weren't being chased by lions 3, 4, 5 times a day. That happened like once in a while, and I'm sure there were big stories about it for years. But generally speaking, think about, going in the woods and walking through the woods and how still and how calm and how entrained to the rhythms of nature the early humans were. Yeah, once in a while you had a fight or flight for sure, but it wasn't the main event. The main event was connecting with the rhythms of nature, being still. And from that stillness, we would act. And this is the key ingredient, is once you get your body into balance, and your digestion is working, your lymph is moving, your brain is draining, you feel calm in your skin. You feel that you're in the eye of the hurricane. And you find and sense and feel that there's nothing you can't accomplish. And you don't feel burned out by your daily activity. Life is not a struggle. You don't feel exhausted at the end of your day. You feel the same energy at the end of the day as when you started. That's what this is really about. It's digestion so we can live our dreams, live up to our potential, and be who we were designed to be, and not let a body breaking down because you have indigestion and joint pain and tiredness and lethargy, and then I'm just struggling through life just to stay alive. We can do better. And that is what this whole picture is about. And that's why I love taking the wisdom of the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda, for sure, and then understanding it in a modern world. Because they understood that this existence that we have wasn't just physical, so we can endure life and get through the weekend and recover. That there was something bigger that we're here to accomplish. And that bigness comes from us establishing being aware of our own silence, and training that silence inside of us with the silence of nature, becoming one with that. And then from there, we hail and become this powerful storm that can change the world hopefully for a better, in a better way. to be a better place. And that's what I love to think about, is we're teaching you how to be little mini hurricanes, slowly teaching you how to build the winds around that storm so we all can become, at the end of the day, fully mature hurricanes with the ability to be dynamically active and functional in this world, feeling fantastic in this body, but from this inner place of composure and calm. And I get it. We are aging. I'm aging too. And that's where, when you are practicing prevention, you can put out these little aging fires very effortlessly and never feel like you have to, in any major way, leave the eye of the storm. And that is a pretty cool way to go through life. And for sure, something that I think I aspire to. Hopefully you all agree and would love to aspire to. I would love to hear your comments about whether you think we can live in the eye of the hurricane. I'd love to hear what you think it would be like to live lymphatic congestion free. How would it feel to have brain clarity, mental clarity, joint elasticity and flexibility, efficiency of digestion, so the food you eat makes you energized, doesn't make you tired. This is what the symptoms of lymph congestion can cause, and when we decongest it, really great things can happen. And so in the next video, I'm going to talk to you about, some real detailed strategies to actually help bring this lymphatic system back into balance and give you some really cool strategies. Sort of put this whole thing together, these first 3 videos, put it together in a tight package for you that you guys can use to move ahead and really establish optimal health, digestive health, and of course, begin to experience the eye of the hurricane and function in a dynamic way from that inner place of peace and calm. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next video. I'm Dr. John Douillard.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at lifespa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.